Joining us today for Worldview with Denis Campbell is Denis Campbell, editor-in-chief of UK Progressive Magazine. He also hosts Worldview on YouTube, youtube.com/Worldview Show. So, Denis, not to focus solely on the horse meat scandal, but to use it to have a different conversation, we've now seen reports from Ikea about horse meat in their Swedish meatballs. We've also seen Taco Bell on your side of the pond with some horse meat positive tests. And we've also heard about some kind of almond cake that may have had fecal matter in it. So we seem to have a broadening scandal.
It is broadening, and quite frankly, it is something that should not be terribly surprising to several of the ministers in the UK government or the EU government. This was made known to them 2 years ago. And as a result of the fact that they've done nothing, now it is blown up into a huge scandal. And it's not something they can blame on the Labour government, because the government of David Cameron has, very consistently been focused on deregulation and moving things away from anything that might look like regulation. And as a result, they've defanged our equivalent of the FDA, the Food Standards Agency. And they're also, because of a lot of cross-border work, a lot of the paths that the horse meat have taken from, Spain, then into former Soviet bloc nations such as Bulgaria and Romania, then they come back across border. There's been no integrity in the food chain, not just in the UK, but across Europe. Now, it's not that people are terribly objected to the idea of horse meat. It is a delicacy in several countries. But if it's on the tin as beef, it should be beef inside the tin.
So let's talk about the Food Standards Agency. So in the U.S., the FDA regulates both food but also pharmaceuticals. Does the FSA also have purview over both of those, or is it food only?
That I'm not 100% certain of, but I do know they are focused on food. And I think one of the most alarming aspects of what we've seen just in the news in the last several weeks is the fact that something like 80% of all antibiotics in the world are now used on livestock and in the food supply.
Right.
This is really something that is a cause of great concern, because if, like, for example, you're starting to see what we've had here for a number of years, the MRSA superbug is beginning to take off in several of your hospitals. It's something that they've been working very hard to contain, and for the most part have now gotten the upper hand on. But it is a virus that ends up being transmitted in the form of a bacteria, that, kills half the people that it infects. So you're going to see more of this sort of thing. Drug-resistant strains of tuberculosis now are quite common. Drug-resistant strains of many diseases long, thought taken care of and eliminated are coming back onto the scene.
So with the FDA, we know that the idea that it is some kind of ultimately objective entity that is going to only make decisions based on the interest of the broad population is not true. On the drug side, we've seen how money can influence the rapidity of approval for a variety of drugs. But on the food side, we've seen a number of different things that are concerning. One of them is the approval of food additives, which they say pose certain risks, but in small doses are okay. And the subjective nature of that, and whether a lot of those things are really allowed in foods because it's big food companies that use those products for preservation or for reducing costs or whatever it may be. And also the other idea of hiding a whole bunch of stuff under natural flavors and the broad number of things that can fall under natural flavors, which if people knew about would absolutely be concerned. So that's the FDA. Talk a little bit about the FSA and whether those types of problems also exist there.
Well, they absolutely do, because you have the same competing interests. Whenever I hear about three different areas, big food, big pharma, or big oil, I get quite nervous. There's been a book that's come out there in the United States, and I've heard several reports on it now, on the amount of salt, fat, and sugar that is being used, and the ethical dilemma that it's now placing on these big food manufacturing companies. There was apparently a meeting many years ago where a senior executive, I think it was at General Foods, stood up and said, we've got to start taking care of the foods that we're producing because we're setting ourselves up in much the same way as big tobacco is, or has in the past, with nicotine being an addicting sort of force, with the amount of sugar, fat, and salt that are put in to get to that ultimate point where people are actually buying their products. And what we've seen happening now is that they're starting to have to pay the piper. There are going to be lawsuits, just like you've seen, I think, in tobacco now against food companies for things such as obesity, because in order to gin up taste and to create a craving for things like fat and sugar and salt, they've been doing what they have to do from a corporate point of view to sell lots of product, but they're not been focused on the health aspects of what they've been doing. So it's creating a huge dilemma for them. And the FDA is sort of walking hand in glove with them by not coming down and saying, wait a minute, you've got to be, they occasionally, through either them or the FTC, say, well, you can't claim that, Count Chocula or Frankenberries are real fruit. that doesn't work. But there are going to be more of these issues coming up in the food supply. And it's good that the light is now finally being shown on this, because on everything from here to GMOs and Monsanto and Roundup, people are now beginning to be very concerned about what they're ingesting and what the long-term effects are going to be of that.
So long story short, how much trust do people have in the food, in the FSA?
Oh, none at all right now.
Okay.
I mean, it's a complete disaster, as it should be, because you've got this situation now where these are the people who are supposed to be blowing the whistle when these issues come up. Where are they? They've been asleep at the switch.
All right. We've been speaking with Denis Campbell. Check out Worldview with Denis Campbell on YouTube.
Yeah, especially tonight, because
youtube.com.
we have Mr. David Pakman on our show.
That's right. I'm your guest today, right?
You're my guest tonight, indeed.
So make sure to subscribe, youtube.com/worldview show, so you won't miss any of the great videos, including the interview with me. And Denis, thanks as always for being here, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thank you.